Hi, in this video, I'm going to read Andy Dufresne's email, tradition meme, and also this comment by Josh Jordan. Peer pressure from dead people. I don't like this idea for tradition. That's terrible. Let's try again. Can I circle it without covering it up? I did it. Okay, tradition is not peer pressure. Like, there is peer pressure in tradition, but there's also rational ideas. There's like all types of ideas, not just one type of idea. Tradition is existing knowledge which is like old enough and significant enough to count. Like there's no clear delineation for what counts as a tradition. But like the older it is and the more important and big and widespread it is, then the more it counts as a tradition instead of just an old idea. This is important because for humanity to make progress over time and over longer time spans than one person's life, some ideas and knowledge have to get recorded or saved or passed on in some way. So like books are really good for that. But you can have oral traditions as well, where you just have to tell people who are younger than yourself some information, and then they tell someone who's younger, and so on and so forth. And that can go on generation after generation. As a system as a whole, like that's really important and good. You shouldn't just hate tradition itself. You know, if we didn't have that, then we'd be starting over technologically like every generation, basically. I mean, it's hard to counterfactually talk about that because we don't have distinct generations. It's not like all the people are born every 25 years and then there's no kids. And then 25 years later, there's more kids. Like, there's people being born all the time. So, like, people from different generations are alive at the same time. So how could each generation have its own, like, separate technology? But nevertheless, like, the basic concept is if you didn't pass on information to younger people, then younger people would have to just make everything up themselves, which would be really bad. That would be the end of civilization. Tradition is literally necessary to civilization. So peer pressure from dead people is attacking it, insulting it, but it is this thing that without which we would not exist as anything like what we are today. We wouldn't know anything about Aristotle or Plato or Socrates. We wouldn't know anything about Rome. We wouldn't know anything about even Enlightenment thinkers like Bacon, Descartes, Locke, Hume. We would have never heard of those because hearing about those is like old information. That's what tradition is. Like, individual rights are a tradition. We have in America a tradition of freedom and free speech and various other good things. Like, there are good traditions and bad traditions. We have a tradition of limited government and separation of powers, where we have 3 different branches of government so that there isn't one all-powerful entity. English is a tradition, like how to speak our language. It changes gradually over time, but like most of it stays the same from generation to generation. You don't have to be peer pressured to learn what a bunch of dead people thought about English. You learn that because it's useful. Alright, so Andy says he didn't see it in the past. I guess he means before, like, years ago? He doesn't say before what. I guess he means he hasn't seen it a previous time than within the last few days when he saw it just recently. But anyways, he would not have liked it in the past, but at some point after joining FI, he came around to ideas like that. Right, it doesn't say so directly and it doesn't give a reason that's easy to criticize directly. I agree with those things. Like, just asserting something as peer pressure is not really explaining your logical case for what you're saying. It's more of a smear. So yes, the argument quality is bad. That's not like the main issue here, but I agree with that. Yeah, it's kind of saying it, bringing up peer pressure like this is kind of saying that if you bow to a tradition, you're a bitch. You're being peer pressured, you're low status, you're easy to influence, you're gullible, you're the kind of person who gets told what to do by peers rather than telling them what to do. Like, the people who get peer pressured are lower status than the people doing the peer pressuring in general. So it's saying, you know, resist peer pressure because you're not low status. Like, that's how you be not low status. If you accepted the peer pressure, you would be low status. Okay, yes. If you take peer pressure literally, it is different than the conventional meaning that's implied here. Oh yeah, I would call that peer pressure. Well, okay, so family and friends. Family has people who are not peers. Your parents are not your peers, and your children are not your peers. So the peers in your family would be your spouse and your brothers and sisters, and perhaps your brothers and sisters-in-law, because those people are around the same age as you. So those are like peers. But your own parents and your own uncles and your own children and your own nieces and grandchildren are not your peers. So that's one of the reasons peer pressure is not associated with families a lot in general. But yes, your friends and your spouse can totally peer pressure you. The term in general refers to peers, or I meant to say friends. The term usually refers mostly to friends rather than spouses or colleagues. But I've seen it used with colleagues before. But it's mostly used with younger people. Like teenagers. It's used a lot with teenagers. It's less common to use with 40-year-olds. But I think it can be used with 40-year-olds. Oh, maybe the issue was not who's doing the pressuring, but Andy wanted to talk about how they make special exceptions. Like it's specifically this example of like if you're 40 and your friends pressured you to go to the bar with them on Friday night and you sort of wanted to stay home, but they pressured you, people would call that peer pressure. But if there's less direct or more gradual pressure about your career, people don't see the peer pressure. Like with the going out, it's called peer pressure when there's like a specific conversation where they say a bunch of pressuring things. They're like, come on, it'll be fun, don't be a loser, etc. Like that's peer pressure. However, they don't say like, don't quit your job, you'd be a loser. Like they sort of just vaguely imply at many different times over a period of years that they would disapprove of an unemployed person and stuff like that. Which is different than when you can point to like in that one conversation, in that specific interaction, people are saying pressuring things. It's different when the pressure is much more diffuse, when it's spread out over years and there's no one conversation where they're like openly in favor. They're telling you, I want you to go to the bar and drink with me on this particular date. Like they're openly in favor of that. They're saying that they want you to do it. Whereas with keeping your job, there's no conversation where they say, I want you to keep your job. Like that's a thing that I want you to do. They won't because that's too much to ask. You can say, I want you to do like a small thing, like going out to a particular social event. But asking someone to keep their job, that's like a big ask. Like your spouse can do that, but your friends can't. They can be like mildly jerks about your career choices, but they can't say like I'm asking you to do X, where X is like a major career choice. Peer pressure relates to low status, young, stupid, and disapproved of. Yeah. Part of why people would apply peer pressure to 40-year-olds being pressured to go out to a bar with their 40-year-old friends is because that is also the kind of thing teenagers do to each other. So it's like a similar example. Whereas teenagers do not pressure each other to keep a job, usually. It's not like a stereotypical thing. Right. Complying with people who are themselves not that high status, like teenagers, is like extra low status because it puts you below the people who are teens. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I agree with this. They're trying to say it's like ridiculous to be pressured by dead people because the dead person's not even there to like do anything to you, or they have no power over you and no direct influence on you. Why are you letting them boss you around when they're dead and can't do anything? Yes. Like, a dead person can have high social status, like they can be famous and approved of. However, that's different than like having the power to like tell people what to do. They're still seen as powerless because they're dead, even though they're high status. The status for dead people gets separated from power. It's also somewhat separate with live people. Like, some people have more power relative to other types of status, or less. Like, that can vary. But there's a huge gap for dead people. Agree. Agree. Okay, I agree. I was expecting the post to actually say something about what tradition is and why it's good, which is what I talked about at the beginning. But the post said other stuff, which was also perfectly reasonable analysis. Okay, and this is called Post-Mortem on My Math Comments from Yesterday by Alyssa. Again, I have not read this in advance. So there were 12 errors and 9 comments. Some errors he proposed a best practice, and for other ones he doesn't know what to do about them. He wants to make fewer errors, that seems good. And he's trying to review his errors and learn from them. I believe the word post-mortem has a hyphen, because I think I looked this up when I was writing my post. See, I wrote this post and I hyphenated the word. And so that was based on like trying to look it up in the dictionary and with Google or something, and I decided a hyphen was best. I'm not super confident of that, but that was my opinion. Like, there's a hyphen here. It definitely gets spelled multiple ways. But this one has a hyphen. This one does not have a hyphen. Anyways, so I don't have like a strong opinion, and I don't even remember exactly what I looked up. But I apparently came to the conclusion that I should hyphenate it. So unless you have like some actual good information, I would go with a hyphen. But if you do have actual information instead of just typed it one way without thinking about it, then it's possible you're right. I don't know. It's quite possible that like both are okay. Like, I doubt I used a hyphen and like a hyphen's actually bad, but it might be fine either way, and it might just be sort of preference or style. Okay, false statements, unclear statements, non sequiturs, boring statements, grammar, spelling, formatting errors, including typos. Okay, well, the post-mortem thing falls under this category, potentially. Like, people definitely spell it that way, but there was some sort of reason I went with the hyphen. So it might be better. I forget, though. The categories seem okay. These two, I think, were picked for being, like, simple. It's trying to avoid controversies about whether something is or is not an error. Like, if I say that's an error in this category, and like here's why, it's going to be reasonably easy to evaluate whether or not it really is an error. It's not trivial or anything, but these categories are trying to be like reasonably simple. And false statement in particular can be a bit hard. But it's trying to keep things like clear cut, I think. And I think that's good, and it's doing a decent job. And then this boring statement one, this is much harder to evaluate, like, was that boring, than the other things. So I think it doesn't fit with the other ones perfectly. It's more, quote, subjective. Like, what is boring is like a tricky topic. And what is boring also varies by person, that is, varies by the subject. Okay, so this one has a 1, even though there's no number 2 error for this one. I think. Yeah, here's one with a number 2. Okay, so this is a number 1 error, and it's labeled even though it's the only error in that comment. However, this one does not have a .1 on the end. Oh, it's no errors found. That's why it's different. I was wondering why it's different. I thought it was like inconsistent, but it's because there's no error. Okay, well, that's reasonable. I think if there's only one error, then numbering them is sort of unnecessary. However, someone might point out another error later, and then it could be confusing if you'd been talking about the error in that one without a number, and then later they had to be numbered. So the numbering changed. So putting the number is reasonable. I did not know that you could put a period safely after a comment link. Like, it would have been good to do a test post somewhere before trying that. Before trying anything but white space before and after. But it did work, it's fine, so that's good. The regular expression probably is searching for a string of numbers after the hash sign. So that's why the period separates it and ends the link. By the way, related, I believe that you have to have white space before the hashtag with one exception, which is that you can write an @ sign. So you can say like @ number 12991, so you can like be saying that you're applying to it, basically. It's not really necessary, but I'm pretty sure I remember adding that as a special rule. You can put an @ sign in front. Okay, so formatting error. Oh, so we're gonna have like all these comments that are, we have to like refer to the comments to see what he's talking about. So the image link was broken. Oh yeah, this one. Right, so the image was supposed to show up there. It's just showing blank because it basically it had the Imgur link without a .png extension on the end. So it was linking to the gallery rather than the actual image. Right, that's not just what Markdown image requires, it's like any HTML image tag. Like Markdown just converts it to an HTML image tag. But yeah, okay, fine. So no errors found. Let's actually review this one really quick. Yeah, it seems fine. Okay, so this one, grammar error. I think I should have written or even to get, but I'm not sure. I don't yet know a reasonable way using only a calculator to get the exact answer. Oh, it's this. This is where. See, I saw the to get and I was thinking it might be related to this text, but he's editing this text. So this correction is actually not really clear because he thought he should have written X, but he doesn't say what it replaces. So he didn't say what text would be replaced by this new text, so it's unclear. So it's not horrible, like you can figure it out, but it could be clearer. And in general, it's good policy to say like change X to Y when you're doing corrections. I think what he's doing is it's the exact quote except for the words in italics, and the words in italics are additions. That's my guess about what it means. So he's saying add the word to in this part. But that policy of like add additions in italics in an otherwise exact quote is not universal. And it's not the only policy someone might use. I think that that's what he's doing because he's like a FI regular who has been around the FI community. But if it was like a random person from a random community, I would have like low confidence that they were following that policy. But I think that it's been used around FI a decent amount. Okay, so he's suggesting there should be a word to added here. The word to goes right here. To get the exact answer or even get a good estimate. Okay, yeah, this sentence is a problem as written and it's better with to. And I have a reason. Okay, so it's related to parallelism. So we have to get here, to get. Now you can, and then we have the conjunction or. The word or is very important. So after conjunction, you can read some things as implied. Basically, you can take some number of words from the beginning of the first thing and read them as implied at the beginning of the second thing. So it's parallel, and it'll be like, these are the repeated words, and then by implication, and then there's like the thing they deal with, and then you use the conjunction, and then you say only the part you want to change, not the part that's the same. That's basically how it works. But it doesn't work here because, so you have the word get repeated. So get is not an implied word. So the only implied word would be to. So what we would have by implication is right here would be to. So it'd be, the implied is either no 2 or a 2 right there at the beginning. And no 2 doesn't work. Like, you need a 2. Because we want the infinitive to get rather than just get. So it's parallel. Like, we're dealing with infinitives right now. It should also be an infinitive. And then, so the problem is with the implied 2 that it's in the wrong place. Because you get 2 even get rather than even 2 get. So the infinitive, it's a split infinitive. You have 2 and get split up. So one option is to say 2 get, so you can just have no implied words, and that works. That puts the 2 in the right place after the even rather than before the even. The alternative that I just thought of is you could delete the word get, just cross it out. That way, the phrase to get is the implied repetition. So what you get is to get the exact answer, or to get even a good estimate. There's a missing of there, so that's a typo that was not noticed. One thing that helps with typos like these is listening to something in audio. If you text-to-speech it, then you will hear the problem frequently. Anyways, going back to what I was saying. So if you delete the word get, what you get is or to get even a good estimate of the answer. The reason I saw the missing of is I was reading it out loud. So to get even a good estimate, it's like a little bit awkward wording, but it's not wrong. And I think when it's an implication instead of the words being written out, it's okay. So I think it's okay with the get deleted. But you can also add the 2 in front of the get, and with just the get, I think the intuition that there was a problem there is correct because I think it's implied split infinitive. All right, false statement. Mixing up absolute value of d meaning distance, and absolute value of, or the average of the absolute value of d. Okay, so Feynman quote, we might therefore ask what is the average distance traveled in absolute value, that is, what is the average of the absolute value of d. Then commented, I'm unclear on what d means without a subscript. Oh yeah, this is a thing he could mean by the whole expression, the average of d. But Josh had just said on what Feynman means by d with no subscript. So he wasn't referring to the whole expression, the average of absolute value of d. He's literally only referring to the d. So he even dropped the absolute value. Like if you're only interpreting the d, the answer is distance. But you shouldn't have the average part of this divided by n, and you also shouldn't have the absolute value part. Because the question was simply, what does d mean? Okay, so he's talking about d itself with no subscript, but then he says, so d itself wouldn't be an average, but now he has absolute value signs around it. So he's adding or dropping the absolute value signs, which is confusing, I think. I think there's a problem there. In fact, he says, when discussing what absolute value of d meant, he mixed things up. But here, where he quotes himself, he says, I'm unclear on what Feynman means by d with no subscript. So this is not absolute value of d, this is just d. Like, this and this are different things. And he even put quote marks. There's quotes there. Quote mark, quote mark. So he's quoting that exact thing, and then in this quote, it's actually different. The quotes don't match. I'm unclear on what Feynman means by the average of the absolute value of d. I think variables. Okay. I'm just gonna move on. I don't want to get bogged down in the details that much. Okay, so this is all unclear. Like, this is still unclear. Like, well, he says Feynman does give a way to calculate absolute value of dn, but he doesn't say average of absolute value of dn. So it's unclear if Josh is saying that Feynman provided a way to calculate the average of the absolute value of d subscript n. So here, what Josh, in his new, supposedly improved version, he says Feynman doesn't give a way to calculate the average of D, the absolute value of D. Now, it's unclear if this is supposed to mean D subscript n, or if he means something else. And it's also unclear if the issue is that Feynman only gave a way to calculate D subscript n's absolute value, not the average. So, yeah, it's very unclear. It's still a mess after rewriting. Right, these bracket things were kind of unclear. He says he explained the angle brackets. Is this the one? Yeah, this is the one. Oh, yeah. Oh, right, so this n, I think, is a subscript? So this was not clear, but I guess the n is a subscript for D. Which I would think should go before the squaring. But anyways, the angle brackets mean expected value. Oh, right. So it'd be like the same value as given by which is the same value as given by Feynman's formula. I don't really like it even with this update. Because I think it reads better with a which is after the comma. Otherwise, you're just throwing this thing on the end, and it's supposed to be like a modifier restatement of some previous thing. I guess a restatement. But it's not super clear what it refers to. Yep, that seems like a reasonable guess. There's some sense in which you already knew. For blog comments, I normally write my name at the beginning before I write my comment. Because what happens is you write a bunch and then you forget to go back up. Like you're down here and then you forgot about that. And if you write like really long comments, they get like bigger. See, like it can get like this and you like eventually you don't even see the author field anymore. So at that point, it's easy to forget that you didn't put the author before. So doing it first helps. Wait, there's a duplicate post? It can't be a literal duplicate because I actually have software to block that. I want to see what he did. Okay, so this one is a duplicate of the previous one. They look like duplicates. Swear to God, I have software blocking for duplicate posts. Hold on, I'm gonna pause and get the code. Okay. So I have... I'm not sure if this is the right code. Oh, here it is. Blocked as a double post. Okay, if they have the same post ID, that means we're posting into the same thread. And they have to be 2 posts in a row, which these were. They were sequential. It's not like someone else posted a different thread in the meantime. And if the bodies are identical, and if c.date is within the last 5 minutes. And these were posted less than 5 minutes apart. So I think they should have been blocked as a double post. I'm gonna check all these conditions, just a second. All right, I got a terminal window. We're gonna go to my server. We're gonna go to the database. We're gonna have comment 1 equals comment 13,000. And comment 2 equals 13,001. And then c1.body equals c2.body. True. Alright, they have identical bodies. What the hell is the problem then? Well, we can check post ID. They appear to be on the same post though. C1.time, or I don't know what it's called. Is it date? It's called date. They were posted 1 second apart. How did this code not trigger? I'm wondering if they somehow got posted like at the same time. So like the first one was not in the database yet at the time that the second one queried the database for the latest comment. That should be false now. Yeah. But if we do like time.now, it is greater than 5 minutes ago. I do not see the error or why this did not trigger. Maybe it's just a timing issue where 2 different Rails processes were used to handle the 2 different requests. Posts have been blocked as double posts before, like it's worked other times. Oh well, I give up. Like this is the first time since I added that code that I've seen a double post, I'm pretty sure. And I've double posted myself several times and had it blocked. And I know other people have done it a few times at least. Anyway, one of the most common ways to cause that is to accidentally double click on the submit button. Also, you can have hardware errors on your mouse. Because if mice start breaking, sometimes they double click. Even if you didn't double click, they can do it like by themselves basically. Alright, this one's a non sequitur. I don't know offhand. I'm just gonna move on. Well, or you can also do like a quick review before you post something and like glance for red underlines and missing author name. Would be a reasonable review. Because there's other reasons to review. Like sometimes you like don't finish a section and then you like move on to write a different section and then you like plan to go back. You can like forget to go back and finish writing something. I've done that occasionally. Not too often, so I'm not too worried about it, but it's happened before. Of course, glancing doesn't necessarily catch that. Like you can't tell that something's incomplete necessarily without reading it, depending on what it looks like. Conclusions. Okay, and then I wanted to reply to this comment at the end. I read in advance like the basically the first paragraph and the last paragraph, so that's why I already knew what the end said, but I didn't read the middle previously. It's awkward to format lists on one line. The semicolon before the numbers like seems kind of reasonable to me. I've seen that before, so I use that sometimes. Semicolon after each list item. Anyways, both 1 and 2 dealing with the semi-complex math topic regarding random walks, square roots, etc. Averages, absolute values, etc. Sources of difficulty. And also I'm going to change it to the word 2, just because when you have the numeral 2 there, and then you have the numbered list with a 2 right after it, it looks like they could be related to each other. So it's a potential confusion. And it's 2 is a short word, so I might as well just get rid of the possible confusion. Alright, well that's my comment. I'm going to post it from a different browser and put my username so it'll turn green because I'm not logged in Chrome, only in Safari. So I'll submit this right after I finish the video. And yeah, that's my video, those 2 things. If you liked it, you know, subscribe, follow, send me money, all that shit. Oh, and ask questions. Like submit some podcast questions or something like that. You know, give me topics if you want more videos.